Welcome to All About Art. My name is Alexandra, and I'm an art historian, curator, and writer. Within this podcast, topics relating to art history, cultural policy, the art sector, as well as a large range of other art-related topics will be covered. Conducting critical discussions, having entertaining exchanges, or just enjoying some relaxing chats, All About Art is where you'll find it all. Join me in exploring and developing cultural discourse. Welcome to another episode of All About Art. In this episode, I sat down with not one, but two guests from the Association for Art History, Gregory Perry, CEO, and Christina Bradstreet, Head of Programs. This episode is part of the Art History Festival 2024, organized by the Association for Art History. Listen on to hear me ask both Christina and Greg about the 50th anniversary of the association, along with Art History Now, an online campaign featuring over 90 eminent art history advocates, comprised of artists, art historians, writers, and broadcasters who have shared inspiring new reflections on what art history means to them and to society, and why it's important to talk more about careers in the cultural sector. We speak about how they both decided to pursue a career in the arts and what transferable skills and qualities come from studying art history. We also discuss the advocacy statements within the campaign, a few of which I am happy to say we will play during the episode. Thank you, Greg and Christina, for coming on the podcast, and to the Association for Art History for the collaboration. Before we dive into the episode, I want to take a minute of your time to mention that All About Art is on Patreon. We are mostly volunteer-led, but in order to cover running costs and other expenses, we make it possible for our lovely listeners to support us, ranging from £1 a month to the price of an oat latte a month, or on the higher end, the price of a Sunday brunch per month, depending on the tier you want to choose. If every person who listens to the podcast signed up for the £1 tier on our Patreon, we would be able to sustain the podcast while also having scope to produce episodes more frequently and expand our activities in demystifying the professional arts sector. So, if you want to receive early access to episodes and behind-the-scenes content, maybe you want to get some merch, or if you just love what we do and want to support us, I would be thrilled if you considered signing up. The link to the Patreon is in the show notes. Also, thank you to our sponsors at Synergy Associates, the art world tech gurus, for supporting this episode's production at their clubhouse on Pall Mall. You can find more about Synergy and their facilities in the show notes. And now, on to the interview. Welcome to the podcast, Greg and Christina. To start us off, I would love for you both to tell listeners more about your backgrounds. Did you both study art history, and what are your roles in the Association for Art History?
Hello, I'm Christina. I did study art history at university for a BA and MA and then a PhD. Unfortunately, didn't have the option of studying it at A-level. It wasn't an option at my school. And so, yes, I work as head of programs for the Association for Art History, overseeing the engagement work that we do with our audiences, be that events or other initiatives for academics and curators, school teachers, school students, art market professionals, and the general public as well.
Wow.
And I'm Greg Perry. I'm the CEO of the Association for Art History, and I also studied art history. I did a BA in it, and I worked in the art field for a while, worked for an art appraiser. I was a picture researcher. I worked for a commercial gallery, worked for a place that provided free legal service to artists and arts organizations who couldn't afford it. And then I decided I want a real career, in quotes, and went to law school. Practiced law for a few years, but all the while I was on volunteer boards in the arts, and I was doing volunteer legal work for museums in Chicago, where I'm from. And then I got an opportunity to work at the Art Institute of Chicago, that's where I started my career, doing advocacy and government relations, and worked there for a while, and then got my master's degree in art history while I was doing that, and then went on to a museum career that I did for about 25 years before coming here to the association.
Wow. Okay. So this is, when we're talking about careers and transferable skills and all of that, which we will get on to a little bit later, you guys are the perfect people to come in and talk about this, because real life experiences, but also through an art history degree that both of you have. Greg, I want to direct my first question to you because, as I just mentioned, we're recording this episode to coincide with the Art History Now campaign, an online campaign featuring over 90 esteemed art history advocates to commemorate the association's 50th anniversary, which is amazing. Can you tell me more about why you're launching this campaign and what it entails?
Yeah, sure. We wanted to do something to recognize our 50th anniversary, and the staff team had a number of discussions about it and which way that we could do that the best way. And we decided we didn't want to sort of look back and sort of look back at the history of the organization and sort of draw on that as something to recap as part of the 50th. We really wanted to do something that was focusing on art history now and people who are practitioners in it, who are engaged with it, or who just appreciate it, even if they're not working in the art field. So we decided on calling these people art history advocates, and we reached out to them and we asked them if they'd give us a quote about what art history means to them or what it means to society and the world. And we had a great response. I was sort of bowled over. Originally, it was going to be 50 people celebrating our 50th anniversary, and we're at 93 now,
right,
and I'm sure we'll be over 100. So that's been great. We wanted to do something that was also celebratory and that had a legacy beyond this 50th year. And so the other component besides these art history advocates is a series of 50 videos that we're doing on people who studied art history and went on to any number of careers, both within and outside of the field. So it's really something to sort of celebrate, where we are with art history now, and also what people can do when they study art history. So it's a very positive campaign. I mean, there's a lot not to be positive about in the art and culture, arts and humanities sectors. But we wanted to focus on, the good stories of people who have gone on and valued art history and want to talk about it. And we called it Art History Now because a lot of people think of art history, because the word history is in there, that it's only about art in the past and it's not about contemporary art. But it is about the past and the present and looking into the future. So those are the two components, and we're very excited about it.
Yeah. I think that is so amazing because, as you say, instead of looking back, you decided to look at the present and look forward. And I think that, I don't want to, say, oh, that hasn't been done before, but it really is rarely done, especially with art history, I think. I think that looking back at the histories of organizations, and because it ties so strongly into art history and the history of society, anthropology, all of that, I think that it would make a lot of sense. But actually what makes a bigger impact, and especially what is incredibly needed right now, in my opinion, is a campaign just like this one. Christina, could you shed light on what roles these videos in the online campaign cover? What's their focus, as we are going to play some in the episode shortly?
Sure. Yeah. So with the 50 careers videos, there's a real diversity of roles and people. So it was really important for us that we have a real range of people from all different backgrounds, race, ethnicities, and the universities that they studied as well. So that was really important to us. And I hope that people will feel that we've done quite well on that front, because we really want to show that art history is not just for the elite, as it's so often, unfortunately, seen to be. So in terms of the roles, there is, of course, the traditional kind of art history roles that you might think of, like paintings conservator, curator, lecturer, auction house specialist, museum director. But there are also some more surprising art world jobs, like Chris Pencer, who is a street art tour guide for corporate clients. He takes them around on roller skates around Shoreditch, looking at graffiti and street art there.
Oh my God, I love that.
It's so cool. He's actually an ex-Sotheby's director. And actually, even within the traditional art world jobs, some of these can be quite surprising. So, for example, we have Ken Paranada, who is curator of art and climate change at the Sainsbury Centre at the UEA. So, we wanted to show that curating is not just Renaissance portraits, although that's an amazing job. Ken's job is about exhibiting art that engages with climate change narratives and also about promoting sustainable curatorial practices. So I think, these days art history isn't just Donatello, Michelangelo, Raphael and Leonardo. I have a friend who always says that he can only name 4 artists, the Ninja Turtles.
I love that so much. That's so funny.
Art history is so much more than that. Wonderful as those artists are, it's Renaissance women artists, it's contemporary queer sculptors, it's neurodiverse installation artists, it's graffiti art, it's street art, like I mentioned, it's tattoos. So all of that is, of course, reflected in the art history jobs that are out there. And I was thinking back to when I was studying for my BA in art history, and my mum was quite happy with my choice because she sort of would often say to me, well, you can do anything that you can do with an arts and humanities degree, like English and history. But there's this bonus of having art world careers as well. And I think that's true. So she was thinking about jobs like school teacher, librarian, archivist, marketing executive, fundraising officer, and all of that kind of thing. So we have all those sorts of careers reflected in the videos as well. Or like Kate Unwin, who has a job that I think is just really cool that I covet. She's head of development for a TV production company. So she develops ideas for new TV programs. But I think what I've possibly only really realised in doing this project is actually that you can do anything with an art history degree. So we've got a perfumer, we've got an undertaker. He's revolutionising the funeral industry, making it a more kinder and more sustainable industry. There was a baker who I really wanted to get, but unfortunately he was too busy. But he studied art history and he runs this bakery where all the staff are prisoners. Also, I really want to kind of get across that with art history, you can also it can also take you into professions that are really quite far from art history. So one of our video participants is head of law, although he works at the National Gallery. There's someone who works in finance, or Gazette, is a client relationship manager for a financial services company, and Apollinia Vlasova, who's a trainee solicitor. So you can do all of these professions as well. I'm now down to the last 3 or 4 people to get booked in out of 50 to get them filmed. And I feel like I've kind of got into my stride now and I could just keep on going and going if we had the time and the budget and the inclination to do so, because there's just so many jobs that you can do with art history. And it's just been...
You can send them my way. I'll get them on the podcast if you want. Dedicate it to you in the show notes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been so amazing to learn about all these wonderful, lovely people and the amazing things that they're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that we have to talk about those kinds of things these days, or maybe perhaps more with the previous government, who was talking about maybe questioning the value of certain degrees. They didn't name them, of course, but and guiding students more to STEM subjects. And I think it's important to show that art history, like the other arts and humanities degree, it teaches critical thinking skills and a lot of skills that they're valuable in the workplace. So art history isn't alone in the arts and humanities of students who've gone on to any number of careers in management, in tech, in the creative arts. So it's really but to see it concretely, played out in the videos and with people who are really enthused about it is inspiring. So I just think this whole project, we've had like 140 people come forward and share their passion about art history. And these really, really busy people who have, written in the quotes because it was important to them. When I asked people, they said, yes, we want to do it. It's important. This is really important to do. So it's just been very inspiring to me and to us to have all these people come forward who either studied our subject or appreciate its value, and they want to do something about it and participate in something to make it known.
I think that it can sometimes be so difficult because, yes, we can quantify it. We can say it brings X amount to the economy, like X million pounds to the economy each year, or it's scientifically proven that engaging with art increases empathy and community well-being and mental health and all of these different things. But it's just getting that message across, and you don't have to say it, but I will. With the previous government, they, with lack of funding and lack of encouragement, of course, that did have a really big impact on the arts and cultural sector. And I think that it's such an integral part of our society. And I can only also speak from a personal point of view. When I went to go study art history, it completely changed how I viewed politics. It developed my view on feminism, for example, my knowledge of, for example, second wave feminism, because you think you have an understanding, but really art is such a deep reflection of emotion, society, of human existence. And when you get to engage with that, in my opinion, it completely broadens how you view the world and how you view other people.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to be too political, but I mean, the new government does appreciate these sorts of things. When you're talking to them about the importance of the art, you're pushing it against an open door. Mm-hmm. They're very much about building up the creative industries and diversifying the workforce in those industries. And they appreciate what it means to the British economy. The creative industries, contributes more than the sports industry, than the automotive industry. It's enormous. They're very much in tune with that. So it's good. And just speaking publicly about the importance of it is really important. So that just even the rhetoric, even if there's no money now, in say their first term, we don't know what's going to happen, but even removing the rhetoric, I think, is an important thing.
Yeah.
And just saying how important it is to British culture and to our place in the world. So, so it's been really encouraging.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a good time. It feels like, there's new rhetoric coming out of the government. We're doing this at the same time. We're all sort of looking forward to doing something and working together to, positively improve these sectors and this industry and people's chances to work in them.
Yeah, yeah. So I think now would be a good time to play some of the videos. So we'll roll the tapes.
I studied art history at the University of Edinburgh. After graduating, I was considering different career paths, and I became a bit anxious about leaving academia and the intellectual community that it has. So law has been at the back of my mind for a while before then, but I haven't really considered it from a practical perspective. So I weighed my options, and I decided to pursue the path that would allow me to take that intellectual challenge, which was law. As a result, I went a 2-year conversion program at the University of Glasgow, where I did my LLB. As to the skills that art history has taught me that I now use in my legal career, there are 3 main ones that I'd like to highlight. Firstly, that's analysis. Secondly, critical thinking. And thirdly, communication. Art history is an inherently analytical subject. It stands at the intersection of so many humanities. That could be anything from history and sociology to philosophy and politics, gender studies and linguistics. Art history teaches you to build a research strategy, sift through large amounts of information, and come up with a well-thought-through structured argument. At the same time, art history rarely holds a definitive answer. There's a lot of caveats and inconsistencies that need to be accounted for, and this is precisely what I now do in my legal career.
Hi, my name is Kenneth Perenada, but you can call me Ken. I'm the curator of art and climate change here at the Sainsbury Center, University of East Anglia. I went to the University of the Philippines and I studied art history and museum studies in 2009. My job involves several different things: curating exhibitions, artist studio visits, and talking to different climate scientists at the Tyndall Center for Climate Change Research. I use art history as a form to problem solve different types of things in my curatorial role as the climate change curator. How do you talk about the climate via paintings, via sculptures, but also via design, architecture, archaeology, galvanizing our public to be part of climate action makes me really excited about what I do.
Hi, my name is Kate and I'm head of development at a TV production company. I specialise in unscripted programming, so that's anything from true crime documentaries to dating shows to retrospective history series. I studied history of art at A-level and for my degree, and then I did a master's in broadcast journalism. My work involves developing new ideas for TV shows and then pitching them to a whole range of channels. So I work with anyone from the BBC to Channel 4 to Netflix. The skills that I've learned in studying history of art have served me really well in my career. Documentary making involves a lot of original research, often using archive materials and interviews to unpeel the layers of a story. And I think this is a bit like the deep investigations art historians do when trying to uncover the real meaning behind a piece of art. Art history matters to me because, like documentaries, it's a window into a world that we otherwise might not get the chance to see.
All right, well, that was really lovely to hear from some of the advocates that you have chosen for this campaign. I would really love to hear more about these advocacy statements. I would like to hear your opinion, if maybe one of them struck a nerve with either of you personally, or do you guys have a favorite?
Yeah, as I said, I mean, they were all so inspiring, and each time one came in, I thought, "Oh, that's perfect. That's so good," and I really loved reading them as they came into to my email box or to our organization. It's really hard to single out one of 93, but I guess I have chosen one that I'll share. But some of the common strains we were hearing or something that you said, Alexandra, earlier, which is how it increases your understanding of other people and other cultures, and how this sort of broadens your worldview. And some people made reference to how, with the sort of divisiveness in the culture these days, how that's most needed now, maybe. They also, were talking about how, yes, it looks to the past, it's examining the present, and it's preparing us for the future. So there was a lot of that coming through, sort of a more global understanding, more empathy, and a lot future focused. So some of that is in this quote that I've chosen to share with you, and I'll read it if that's all right. And this is by Suk-Kyung Lee, who's the director of the Whitworth Gallery in Manchester. And she writes, "Art history illuminates the past to guide our present and future cultural journeys. Understanding creative expressions, artistic movements, and their socio-political contexts helps decipher the interconnections and entanglements of global stories. It enriches everyday life by fostering critical thinking, aesthetic appreciation, and empathy. By studying the evolution of artistic expression from many civilizations, we decode the collective consciousness of different cultures and traditions, challenging our preconceived viewpoints and paradigms. It's a roadmap for a more inclusive world, reminding us of our shared, sometimes conflicted histories, and inspiring us to envision new ways of living together." Which I thought was so well put.
That makes me want to clap. I have this inherent need to just be like...
I know. There was a lot of fists in the air when I was reading these. It's just that, you hear the passion and you hear the thoughtfulness about, why people are doing this, why they think it's important for all of us. And as I said, I found it truly inspiring to read these, and I'm hugely appreciative of all of our colleagues, coming together to take part in this.
Yeah. And Christina, did one? No. You're like all of
top
them.
That.
I know. Like Greg says, it's just so hard to choose. I really loved Janina Ramirez, the art history documentary makers. One was just so beautiful. She talks about the thrill of getting up close, touching even the marks made by an artist maybe hundreds of years ago, and having that kind of instant connection across time and place. If I'm going to choose one, I thought I'd go with the one by Daisy Dunn. She's a classicist, popular classics writer. So she writes, "You can read about what people were wearing in 1425, or you can see it for yourself. You can imagine what the Battle of Waterloo looked like, or view it through the eyes of someone who was actually there. You can form an image of Henry VIII, but the artist he sat for will tell you what he was actually like. Art history is a transporting discipline. It will carry you in an instant to remote places and times and show you not only what another person saw, but what they thought and how they felt. Art history matters because it connects. So I really like this one because it's just so true that art history leaps across disciplines. That's actually a quote from Janina Ramirez there, leaps across disciplines. If you're studying history, why not do it through the lens of art history? And that's actually probably true of all disciplines. If you're studying maths even, or English, sociology, RE, history of medicine, politics, whatever it is, you can bring it to life through the study of art history.
While you were reading that, I genuinely had to compose myself a little bit because I felt quite emotional because it truly is we were just talking about our mutual acquaintance earlier, Maureen Tanguy, who wrote the Visual Detox. And in that, she explains that, 65% of us are visual learners. And so it's very, very important that for her, it's the rhetoric of the visual diet that we consume. But I think that for me personally, learning about the world, about other people, and I know I'm repeating myself now, I'm like a broken record, but it truly just changed how I view things. And so it makes me quite emotional because I know that so many people, everyone in this sector who does the work that we do in whatever way it may be, who, studied art history in order to be able to live our lives doing things that involve it in some way, shape, or form. They all come with that same belief and passion. And I just think it's quite powerful. But I actually would love to know how both of you came to discover your love of art history. Was there a moment when you were like, yes, the penny dropped and you knew that that's what you wanted to do, that was what you wanted to pursue? Or was it more of a gradual thing or something completely different?
Yeah, I came from a lower middle class family. My parents loved history, archaeology, literature, but they didn't really have any kind of knowledge or interest in art. It wasn't particularly on their radar. In fact, the one art history book that we did have in the house probably had the lowest status. My dad's very precious about his books, don't touch them. But we had this book on Leonardo da Vinci, but we were allowed to use that to eat fish and chips off if we were sitting in front of the television with our chips papers.
It's definitely low status.
I love how it's don't touch his books, except for this one. You can get that one really greasy.
Yeah. And I can remember when I was 17, one Saturday, completely out of the blue, a boy that I fancied just turned up at our house and asked if I wanted to go for a walk with him, which I did. And as we were walking along the common, he asked me about my interests and whether I liked art. And I said yes, just, because I kind of thought I had to sound cool. But I was actually struggling to think of a single artist that I could name that I liked. But around that time, I was doing my French A-level, and I wonder if, inspired by that conversation, I decided to do my French A-level coursework on the letters between Van Gogh and Gauguin. So I think, if I've got this the right way around, I think we have the letters from Van Gogh to Gauguin, but some or all of Gauguin's replies are missing. So I was kind of making up the replies. And then possibly because of that, my dad then took me to the National Gallery in London, which was the first time I'd ever been to an art gallery. So I think I was 17 or 18 then. And I just completely fell in love with Van Gogh's paintings, the sunflowers and the chair. You really felt this kind of really visceral, aesthetic, powerful feeling in response to those paintings. And then because of that, decided to change his university course. So I'd been offered a place at Sheffield to study history, but I sort of realised that I couldn't really be bothered to read the prospectus properly. And if I couldn't be bothered to read the prospectus, was I actually going to read the course books? So I switched in clearing, even though I got the grades, and took a place at University of Leicester. And I remember arriving on the course and there were others who had studied history of art at A-level. And I remember hearing one of the girls saying that she'd read all of Salvador Dali's diaries. And I remember thinking, who's Salvador Dali? I don't even know. But I did go on to get a first for my BA, and then I went on to do an MA and a PhD. Fingers touch wood, it's kept me in work ever since. So I've worked in learning at the National Gallery. I taught A-level art history. I ran the careers department at Sotheby's Institute of Arts.
You did?
Yes. Oh. And although my current role here at the AH is about promoting and supporting the discipline of art history, which I'm really passionate about, I still get to do my own art history on the side. So I wrote my book, Scented Vision, Smelling in Art 1850 to 1914. And I'm now curating an exhibition on scent and the art of the Pre-Raphaelites, which is going to be at the Barber Institute this autumn.
Oh, amazing.
So, yeah.
That's so exciting.
I was thinking actually on the way here, I really ought to call my dad this evening and thank him for taking me to the National Gallery, because that's really where it started.
Wow. That's so powerful that it was like that one moment that you went and you really felt like, okay, yeah, this is, I mean, there were some things that led up to it, like your French A-levels and doing those letters, but yeah, I guess the sunflowers really did it for you. I don't think I'm going to call
Eddie and thank him for that walk, actually. I think that might be a bit weird.
Well, shout out to Eddie. Yeah. That's about as far as we'll go here. But I do love that. Oh, because of a boy. No, just kidding. It was because of the passion for the paint that Van Gogh put on his canvas. How about you, Greg?
Well, I suppose I would, unlike Christina, I would credit the women in my family and not the men or the man. I guess there was just art in the house, sort of. We had a copy of Gombrich, the story of art, the classic, classic survey book. My mother had just art books in the house. She had a portfolio of color prints, so we had prints of masterpieces in the house. And she would draw, and my sister became an artist, and I grew up in Chicago, and she took lessons at the Art Institute of Chicago, and my mother took me.
It's quite a renowned institution, the Art Institute of Chicago. Like, it's very well known.
Certainly is. Yeah. And I was taken there on Saturdays as a 3-year-old to wait for my sister to finish her lessons, and I was told that I was rambunctiously running around the galleries. I don't know who this slanderous story came from. I'm sure I was well behaved. That somehow that must have all sunk in. So I just was used to looking at. I was a very visual person. I liked looking at images, and I think that just this sort of took off in me. And when I was a teenager, I was going to the Art Institute on my own just to, see the pictures and visit the museum. I loved the atmosphere. And then when I was going to study at the undergraduate level, I was majoring in psychology. And you had to take, this is a social science, so you had to take humanities courses. So I took an art history course. And it was my sister who said, even introducing me to it, she said, you can study art history. And I thought, wait, what? I love this thing. I can do this. I can study this. And I really loved it from the moment I took it. And eventually, like Christina, then I changed my course of study and took art history all through undergraduate. And yeah, so I have to credit my mother and my sister for the introduction. And my mother, this is kind of funny a little bit. She was a person who took reproductions of famous works of art to the local schools and talked about them. She was a picture lady.
So you really come from like a very artsy.
So she didn't study art history, but she just had her. She was an autodidact, So she just loved it and studied up about it herself, and didn't work outside the house, but had a great interest in art, which I guess passed down to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so lovely. I feel like I just kind of wish we could hear. Everyone has such powerful stories of how they've come to fall in love with art history, and I keep saying that I get quite like touched at that, because it's on to my next question, because it ties in getting a degree in art history. It doesn't really have the best reputation, and I want to be really honest about that, at least from in terms of like when I announced that I was going to study art history. You know, I was told you're not going to make any money. You should study something, you know, more practical. You should like, what was your first degree? I really hope you have a first degree, because why are you getting your first degree in art history? And, you know, I'm really all about proving that wrong, especially with this podcast. Like it's been a big project for me to just slowly make a difference in making sure that people understand that it is a very valuable, very legitimate thing to study art history. And I know that that's your mission too. I mean, that's why we're here. That's why you guys have done this amazing campaign for the 50th anniversary. But so, Christina, I wanted to ask you, can you speak more on the transferable skills and the qualities that come from studying art history?
Yeah, so a theme that really comes through very clearly in the videos, I think, is about how art history helps you to think critically and to be analytical and to present information. So we heard Apollonia Vlasova, the trainee solicitor, talking about how art history helped her to learn to analyse texts and to synthesise large amounts of information and then present it in a coherent argument. There's Rupinder Garsha. She's a marketing executive who talks about how she has strong written and oral communication skills, because art history is often largely an essay-based subject, although there may be other important projects as well, like possibly curating an exhibition or writing catalogue texts, for example. Gazit talks about the creative and critical skills needed in financial services. And of course, really importantly, art history teaches you how to learn to look and interpret images, which might sound like a soft subject, but it's actually really, crucial, critical in this TikTok age, or this age where we're bombarded with visual imagery, including kind of fake news and AI generated imagery. So really learning to look and understand what we're actually looking at.
And also how it makes us feel, right? Because I think a lot of people aren't introspective enough as well of what they're consuming and how that ends up having an impact on their mental health, how they treat other people, how they view the world.
How are we being manipulated? Or exactly.
Yeah, 100%.
And I was thinking, actually, I probably should ask them to take part in these videos. I actually know someone who has such a cool job. They teach art history and visual literacy to doctors, forensic scientists, police detectives, and even US Navy SEALs. So anyone who really needs to know how to look properly and really see and understand what they're looking at with an analytical mind.
That is so badass. I'm sorry, but that is so cool.
Actually, she used to be at the Art Institute of Chicago, I think.
I want to do that. I'm going to quit my job in a gallery and go do that. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not quitting my job.
In terms of qualities, which Greg already kind of touched upon, I think in the advocate statements, what really came across to me about studying art history is about how it helps us to understand humanity. It gives us empathy. It helps us connect with others across time and place. Art isn't made in a vacuum. The artists who make it are going through stuff, whether personally or socially, culturally, politically. So art is made in different contexts and circumstances. So we get this insight and connection into the past and into other places and cultures that then helps us to understand our own lives and times better.
Do you want to add to that at all? Because I know I just asked Christina, but
I think that probably anyone who studied art history was asked the question, what are you going to do with that? And we're trying to answer that. Well, here are 50 people who are doing all various types of jobs, and you can go into so many things. So we think it's really important to focus on careers for people who studied our subject. Students want to know, parents want to know. So Christina's done a great job of revamping our website, which has a lot of options on it as far as, what you can do when you study art history. Again, both within and outside the art field. And we do quarterly. We do four webinars a year on the different types of careers you can have when you study art history. and the commercial sector, in museums and public museums and galleries, and sort of support positions in those institutions, and then on careers just completely outside of the art field. And these are really well attended. We have about 5 speakers each time, and they all talk about their experiences. And oftentimes they have these circuitous routes that you and I took to get to where we are. They're very popular. They're aimed at people who are, at A level and university level. So the careers is a big push for us, because we know how important it is for everyone to think about, what results from the big investment they make when they go to university. And I think it's helpful that, with this tool here, what we have online with the campaign, people in our history departments are having conversations with parents based on the information we're giving. Because I think it's important people to know that, and to know that their children won't be committed to a life of penury. If they study art history, there's a whole world of things they can do.
Yeah, and there's tangible resources, right? I think when I wanted to study art history and I was looking into it, I number one, I didn't know where to look. But also, I don't think that 7, 8, well, I guess now when I was picking what I wanted to go study, it was 8 or 9 years ago now at this point. Jesus. But I didn't know where to look. And so it's so important that in the sector that we develop these resources and make them really widely known, so that you don't have to, go through, jump through a bunch of hoops in order to find these resources, but instead that they're becoming, I guess what you said earlier, Greg, about the rhetoric changing. I mean, that was in the context of the government, but I think in general, this rhetoric to change, we need to have those tangible resources, such as an online campaign, or, maybe one day. I know that there are a lot of different publications out there, but there aren't that many out there for people who've studied art history who might want something more practical as well. So those sorts of things that positively contribute to that side of the practical side of the professional art world, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're sending these links that have the advocates and the videos out to schools and to universities, department heads, so that it's keyed into the sort of the communities that we think need to know this.
Yeah.
It's been positive, and we get some positive feedback from our school and university colleagues.
Yeah. Well, so if listeners want to get involved and learn more about what you're doing with this campaign, but also in general with the association, how can they get involved? Either as people who want to consume what you are putting out there, like the content and the videos and things like that, because this is going to be launched on, hopefully, I think, as planned, the 16th of September, this podcast episode, which is when the campaign is officially launching. Or are you, things are online, but...
Yeah, we've officially launched it, but this will be held during the podcast. Will be sent out there during our Art History Festival.
During the festival, that's it, right. And so we have all the advocacy statements online, as well as the 50 videos?
The videos we're producing over the series of the year. So we have 31 videos at present, and we have the 93 advocates. That's all on at our website, and it's forarthistory.org.uk.
Yeah, which you can find in the show notes, listeners.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And hashtag forarthistory on social media. And yes, so anyone can access and have a look at these quotes, have a look at the videos, and then from now until November, we'll be sending out a couple of more tranches of the videos to get us up to the 50. But it's a great resource to kind of just look through and page and read a quote when you want and look at the videos. And so it's all out there now, and we're excited that this podcast is going to be out when we're doing our festival in about a month.
Can you say a little bit more on the festival?
Yeah, sure. So it's something we started 3 years ago, and we thought, there was a number of festivals in the UK, but there's no art history festival. So we thought, we're the ones to do it, and it's aimed at the public. Everything on offer is free, and it's during a week in September, where this year about 70 organizations are doing programs all during that week, both at their own venues and or online. And it's mostly public-facing organizations such as museums and galleries that are doing something under the banner of the Art History Festival. So all the major nationals that we all know and love in London are involved, regional museums and galleries, local museums and galleries, as well as arts organizations and individual speakers are all. So we have all this programming that we're doing, during the 6 days in September. And the point of it was to raise the profile of art history, because if you ask somebody if they like art, most people will say, yeah, sure, I like art. And it's like, well, what do you think of art history? And they either might not know what that is, or they might think it's really elitist. So we just wanted to make the connection that, people go in museums and galleries, in droves, and they have these great experiences. And actually, well, what facilitates that experience is people that study art history. And it's this thing that, may be a mystery to you, or maybe you think is really not for you, but, you're loving this experience here at Tate or at your local gallery. And it's because of art history that we have this knowledge about what you're looking at. So we wanted to make that connection with the Art History Festival. So if you're going into your local museum or gallery, well, it's actually art history that's behind that, And so that was the point of it, is to raise the profile of our subject so that it's known more, and people know what the sort of outcomes of art history are, that impacts their daily lives.
Well, I was going to say, what people need to do now is to follow us at For Art History. The videos are on YouTube, they're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, I think on Facebook. I can't think.
On the social media of your preference.
Follow us on at For Art History, and you'll find the videos, also information about the festival, which is also on our website. And you can find the advocate statements there as well. So if anyone has a son or daughter who's thinking about studying art history and you're kind of not sure if this is the right path, take a look at those, because I think they make such kind of powerful, convincing case.
Perfect. I will make sure to link everything in the show notes so that people have easy access to all of those resources while they're tuning in to the episode. So, Greg and Christina, I have one final question to end the episode that I ask all of my guests on the podcast. If you could pick one artist from art history to have dinner with, who would it be and why?
Well, I'd love to have dinner with John Everett Millais, the Victorian painter, founding member of the Pre-Raphaelite Society, because I'd want to talk to him about whether my ideas about scent in his painting are kind of on track or not. I'd love to know what he really thought of Dante Gabriel Rossetti, this kind of romantic bohemian figure, and because I like a bit of gossip, I'd want to know what he really thought about Ruskin, John Ruskin, the art critic who championed his career. But of course, Millais' wife, Effie, had previously been married to Ruskin. So Millais I'm putting my fingers in inverted commas, but rescued her from a very unhappy marriage that they say was unconsummated. So I want to know what he really thought about Ruskin. But I'm kind of torn, though, whether I'd want to dine with the young, handsome, fiery Millais, just when he was just getting started, or Millais in older age when he was kind of really part of the art establishment and very rich, but could reflect back on his life. But yeah, definitely Millais for me.
Amazing. I've had a lot of different answers on the podcast, and never have I had someone say, because some people say like this person or this person or this person, but I've never had someone say this person at this stage in their life, or maybe at this stage in their life. I find that such an interesting concept, because it's like, fresh and, chipper in the art world, or maybe like as an artist, or maybe, with a lot of wisdom, but maybe heavy is the head that wears the crown when it comes to, working in the arts for a very long time, maybe a little bit more jaded, but I don't know. I'm here for the gossip as well. That sounds really fun. And how about you, Greg?
We think of art history as encompassing the related fields of design history and architectural history, so that we deal with visual, material, and spatial culture in art history. So I'm going to pick someone who is primarily known as an architect, though is also an artist, comes from my hometown of Chicago. Her name's Marian Mahoney Griffin. And she was the second woman in the U.S. to get an architecture degree in 1894 from MIT. And she was the first woman to pass the state of Illinois licensing exam in 1898, which is the first such exam in the country. She went to work for Dwight Perkins, who was her cousin, who was a prairie school architect. And this was in the same building as Frank Lloyd Wright. So she was with Dwight Perkins for a year and then went over, and Frank Lloyd Wright hired her. She was his first assistant and for years his only assistant. And she is really the one that we think of, whether we know it or not, when we think of Frank Lloyd Wright's sort of beautiful prairie school drawings. She did many, if not most, of the presentation drawings that he did. And she developed this style that was sort of abstract and that was influenced by Japanese prints. And that really was the sort of, that became sort of the face of the prairie school architecture and influenced architectural drawing for years to come. So sometimes credited and sometimes not. So here she was, this really strong woman who, in the 1890s got an architecture degree from MIT. And then she went to work for this, by most accounts, even his own, sort of an irascible character with a healthy ego, and really was sort of sublimated to that ego, who was presenting Frank Lloyd Wright to the public. But it was, and so, really you think of the designer as the real sort of the genius or the artist, quote unquote. And she's the one who's like doing the drawing. She then married someone who was an assistant of Frank Lloyd Wright's, named Walter Burley Griffin, added his name to hers. And she encouraged him to, in 1911, to put in an application to win the prize to design the city of Canberra. And there were 137 applications, and she worked with him, and they won. And so in 1911, 1912, they started designing, making the plans for Canberra. And again, it was Walter Burley Griffin's submission, but it was her drawings that, really helped to sell the whole project on people. So if I were to have dinner with her, I guess I just want to hear about her strength of character to get her through, her architecture degree, her licensing at such early times, and then ask her what it was like to work with those two strong men and maybe not getting all of the credit. She sort of willingly took sort of second fiddle with her husband. But I guess I'd want to know, was that really because you were being a pragmatist at the time? Or were you more comfortable in that role? She said she was more comfortable, but that could just be because of the times.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
over here like, yeah, probably.
I know, yeah. And what we don't know, and this is what I also would ask her at dinner, is, how much were you actually designing? Because there's questions about that. These drawings were so wonderful. And how much was she influencing and really working with Wright and working with Walter Burley on the actual designs? So I think it's something that's not really documented.
Yeah, thinking about that authorship.
Yeah. So it's really sort of fascinating character, a strong woman, but yet was taking a subsidiary role with these two really, sort of giants of architecture. So I'd like to have dinner with her and have a chat.
That's amazing. I want to join both of your dinners if that's okay. Well, that concludes all of my questions. Thank you both so much for taking the time this evening to sit down with me and record this episode, and for sharing all of your insights. And just one final call to action for listeners who've made it this far. Please look in the show notes. Please go on the website, check out the campaign, watch the videos. And I guess we're all here thanks to art history.
Yeah, and come to the festival.
That too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that is it for today on All About Art. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a rating or a review, as it helps more people discover the show. Also, feel free to share with your friends, or if you share on social media, tag me and get in touch. Thank you so much for listening.